Good morning. It is 10:53 a.m. on Sunday, October 4th, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I've been up for a little bit. This is 5 more minutes. Because it's Sunday, I'm continuing my rewatch of The Legend of Korra with Book 3, Chapter 2, Rebirth. This continues Book 3 already being just it feels a much more natural sort of story where it is examining various ramifications of things. Characters feel like themselves. It's good stuff. And on top of that, we have the building villain storyline, which has some of the coolest character designs in the whole series, I think. And also, we get a little bit of fan service with, Lord Zuko at the end. It's pretty good stuff. So let's talk about it. So first and foremost, let's just follow Korra and her storyline. Uh, she has agreed to leave Republic City because, of course, she and Tenzin plan to travel the world, find all of these brand new airbenders, and ideally hope persuade them to join a new air nomad culture and try to refill and repopulate the temples. It's not going great so far. I mean, we begin with just sort of establishing like who's coming, who's not coming. We have a great big fancy, very cool airship from provided by Future Industries, and Asami's coming, which again leaves it a little bit unclear exactly what's going on with Asami, because obviously Future Industries is doing okay enough if they have these big fancy airships that they can spare, but also Asami is able to just come along with Team Avatar, doesn't have to stay and manage things or something. I don't know. It's this is not a complaint so much as just it's one of the weird little gaps in there. But that's fine. So Asami's coming. Bolin seems like there was never any question in his mind that he was going to come. Tenzin and Korra, of course, are coming. But then we decide that Bumi's coming because he's one of the new airbenders. Makes sense. Kaya's not coming because she's going to stay behind to help Pema, Tenzin's wife, with the kids, Milo and Iki, and of course, just they have to also recognize that people might actually still come there, and so they need to have at least some people stay behind so they can receive any new airbenders that show up there. But Jinora is going to come on the mission as well because she's the eldest and closest to airbending mastery in her own right. And let's see. And then the only remaining question for this opening sequence is like, will Mako come or not? Because it's clear that he's still super awkward with everyone. He wants to help, but he feels emotionally distant and awkward and is not sure how to handle things. So, like, he brings this map with the known airbender sightings in on it, but he when he goes to turn it over, he's like weirdly stilted and formal with Korra, and it's all awkward. And it seems like he's gonna leave. But we have a pretty genuine moment with Bolin and Mako where Bolin is like, what are you talking about not coming? And, he had already said no to Korra. But then Bolin is like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I have a job here. I have a life here. You have a life. You're sleeping under your desk. And as for a job, how is what you're doing more important than rebuilding a civilization? And Mako is, struggles to argue with that because, of course, we know that the real reason is that he still feels weird and in the doghouse. It's kind of like, yeah, let's come join this small crew of people that includes both of my recent ex-girlfriends. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, we can see why he might feel out of place there. But they clearly all want him to come, and Bolin is kind of, so he talks about feeling like he's drifting away. And one dealing with some allergies today. And Bolin is kind of saying, Okay, but no one is drifting you away. If that's happening, it's inside you. And because all of us are here saying, no, please come back. You're too far away. Come back with us. We like you. We need you. We want you here. And he's the one saying, I'm drifting away. And so they're saying, well, stop then. Don't drift away. So we can understand like the emotional reality of what Mako's going through, and but ultimately what guilts him into coming along is Bolin basically implying like, what if we meet our dad's mother, our grandmother, and she is so distraught that you decided not to come that she dies on the spot. Which is some good storytelling, because not only do all of these emotions feel earned and authentic and everything, and some good brother relationship there, but also just that it sets up that they have family in Ba Sing Se, which is, the capital of the Earth Kingdom. And so, like, yeah, that's all good. So the, Team Avatar sets out, and we have then the first of a montage of meeting potential airbenders, but in what like, this is another example of deft storytelling, something that doesn't occur to us until it happens, but in retrospect seems obvious, which is that a lot of these brand new airbenders maybe don't actually want to leave their whole lives behind and join a whole new culture that they don't know anything about. It seems entirely reasonable when you put it like that. It's like, why would they want to do that? Like, just because this is the most important thing in the world to Tenzin doesn't mean that everybody feels that way. And so they discovered, like, gosh, this is a lot more of a struggle than we expected. And Tenzin is having a really hard time not taking this personally, right? Because he is acting like every single person saying no is a rejection of everything he stands for. When in reality, if we have to think about it, it's like, even if lots of those people might theoretically be open to it at some point, he's selling so hard that he's basically forcing them to turn him down if they don't want to just instantly leave everything they know behind to go off into the unknown, just because someone pushed a magic button somewhere and their names came up in the lottery, right? And it's one of those things where I think that, until it happens in the episode, it doesn't seem, it doesn't necessarily occur to us that that's the case. But yeah, it does seem obvious that a lot of people are not going to want to come necessarily. So, they're not going to kidnap people. Although Korra comes really close with Ryu, that 22 failure to launch kid, whose mother tries to encourage him to go along. But that's a really interesting little revealing anecdote for Korra too, just because he essentially just stubbornly is rejecting the idea that there's any sense of duty or responsibility associated with these powers. And even for the Avatar, like, she's saying, well, look, I didn't pick being the Avatar, but I have to do it. And he's like, no, you don't. And she doesn't actually have a good answer for that, because the real answer is, well, you don't really have to. I mean, what does have to mean? Who's making you? What it really is there's an element of, where with great power comes great responsibility. And the fact that Korra does actually feel inclined, like, I don't think for her that she ever has even questioned the idea that she should be the Avatar and she should be trying to make the world a better place and all of that. I don't think it's ever even occurred to her that the answer is not obvious. Well, of course you would. Why wouldn't you? When the answer for a lot of people is, why would I? That's not something I'm interested in. And so she is just utterly unable to deal with that line of argument. And so she's at the point where she's literally going to drag this kid out of the house, which again would be kidnapping. But ultimately, Mako and Bolin persuade her to, relent. And so they're all thinking about whether should we just go to Ba Sing Se? Maybe there's more there. But then Bolin suggests they try doing well, let's try to sell the cool things about being an airbender instead of just trying to focus on them leaving everything behind. Let's try to show them what they would be getting, the cool parts, the airbending parts. And so they put on this show, and it's this great stuff with, Tenzin does his little air wheel thing. He's got his shirt off. We have, Jinora flying around on the glider. We have this whole funny thing where Mako is half-assed pretending to be this bad firebender so that he can be stopped by Korra's airbending. And it's a show that seems to be entertaining to a lot of people, but then they all leave at the end. And then, of course, we get Kai. Kai is a kid who runs up, talks about how, oh yeah, I definitely want to join. I'm eager to join. I'm excited to join, and you don't have to worry about asking my parents because I'm an orphan. And everyone is like, oh yeah, well, we're so glad to have you, and it's so sad that you're an orphan and all of that. But then we have, even in this early scene before the reveal, we have Mako kind of standing in the back, kind of squinting like, wait a minute. I see what this kid is doing because this is what I used to do when I was a kid. And then sure enough, the kid, Kai, says there's outlaws after him. So when a bunch of people show up, chasing him, Korra initially is defending him, but it turns out, wait, no, they're actually the police. They're chasing him because he's a thief and he stole a bunch of valuables from the people who were trying to be an adoptive family. And there's a discussion about, what does that all mean now? And ultimately, they decide that, okay, obviously the stolen valuables have to be returned. But maybe instead of just taking this kid to jail, maybe we try bringing him along anyway. Like, he clearly needs, some guidance to try to get on the right path, but, he's not going to get that in jail. And it's not like they've had a lot of luck with other airbenders, is where they can be choosy about it. And so they bring him on, even though Mako still gives him, the lecture of like, I see through what you're doing in this whole thing. Like, oh, I'm changed. Yeah, I used to be this bad kid, but now I'm an airbender and magically I'm different. And Mako is basically like, come on. But then we also get a hint that maybe Jinora is crushing on this kid a little bit. And so, yeah. It's like, so they've got at least this small victory, which is, colored a little bit by like, is this kid going to be trouble? Probably going to be trouble. But in the meantime, they finish up and they're planning to head on to Ba Sing Se next. And so that's where we leave Korra and Tenzin's story. But then let's switch over to Zahir. So we met Zahir at the end of the last episode, where this guy who apparently was already in a Supermax prison before he got bending, and then was able to escape now that he has airbending. And so we get to see him rescue two more of his apparent compatriots. And that means we get two more super prison designs. I mentioned last week that I'm kind of a sucker for like superpower prisons, like in the weird extreme circumstances they have to go through to try to prevent, the person with powers from escaping. And so here we of course see extreme versions of a couple of things that we've seen before on in original Avatar. So we have at sea an all wooden prison designed to hold the Earthbender. But, Zahir sneaks on, disguised as one of the Order of the White Lotus, manages to get a couple of stones into this guy, I think it's Kazan, and what he does is he immediately creates like this spinning blade of lava by melting the rocks. He's a lava bender. Ah! and he uses that to cut free of his prison and escape. And he's got cool tattoos, and he's obviously glad to see Zahir. And it's like, hey, Zahir, nice airbending. And sure enough, what Zahir says is that I have the harmonic convergence to thank for that. I take it as a sign that our mission is righteous. And we're like, uh-oh, what's the mission? And so then the two of them go to rescue, I believe it was Minghua. Gosh, I didn't have the wiki handy. Hang on. Just want to make sure I'm saying their names right. Yeah, it was Gazan and Minghua. Yeah. And she is another really cool design. So we have like this volcanic prison where everything's hot. And the idea that she would have to be, kept away from water. And we remember a little bit, like we had a similar design for the Puppet Master lady in the original series. But so in this case, though, we see a woman who is chained up in this cage, suspended over lava, and she has no arms. Like her arms are gone at the shoulder, and but then as soon as Zahir gets some water down to her, she makes water arms with water bending. How cool is that? And she's awesome with it, of course, because she makes them like all long and tentacly, and she's badass and escapes too. And so she comments on like, "Oh man, I can't believe you rescued me before your girlfriend." And Zahir's just like, "We're getting her next." And it's like putting the band back together, and it's cool and scary. And then of course we finish the episode with Lord Zuko, Old Man Zuko, who is exciting to see, but of course also here to give us a little bit of exposition, and that we won't mind because it's also fan service. But basically saying Zahir and his crew, each of them is more than a match for any bender all by themselves, and the four of them together could be disastrous. So his whole thing is he knows where they're going to go next. So he proceeds there on his flying dragon, and then he of course says that they should let Lin Beifong know that they have to protect the Avatar, which tells us that, okay, well, their mission probably has something to do with the Avatar, right? But of course, what he doesn't know is that, they're going to contact Lin Beifong, and she's going to say, yeah, about the Avatar. She's gone. We kicked her out of the city, apparently. So we will see how that all develops. But we'll talk about episode 3 next week. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.